Funding for Off 90 is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Cruising your way next, Off 90. A soldier returns to the battlefield. A win-win situation creates a great partnership. Take a summer cruise on a lake. Plus, we reopen the floodgates in Rochester. There's the exit up ahead for our next stop, Off 90. Hi, I'm Barbara Keith. Thanks for joining me on this journey off 90. Joe Doherty has a farm near Le Sueur. A few years ago, he traveled to Vietnam with Minnesota Soybean, a nonprofit organization from Mankato, on a trade mission to build both relationships and potential markets for their crops. Joe is also a Vietnam veteran. He talked to us about what it was like to go back.
Joe Doherty is the name, D-O-H-E-R-T-Y, and Joe is pretty simple, it's J-O-E. I was on the farm, farming with my father, right here in Tyrone Township, Le Sueur County. There was no farm exemptions for that particular conflict, so we got our notice. I got my notice to go, and kind of somewhat expecting the conflict was expanded and continuing, so we went to serve. They wanted me in like July or whatever, and I applied for extension so I could help harvest the crop that fall. A friend of mine from Le Sueur was drafted the same day. We went together. So over to the courthouse and off to St. Paul to the recruitment center and signed in there, and then down to Kansas City to transfer over to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training. It's supposed to be a 6-week course, and it was. We got out of there right at Christmas time, just to get a break and come back. And then, of course, we reported to our next station when mine happened to be out in California. They needed me to be a company clerk, so they sent me to company clerk school. You know, you just got your orders. Your orders were cut and delivered to you, and you went wherever the hell they thought fit. They decided to put together this company of military intelligence on the East Coast. So they shipped us over to Fort Bragg, which is at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina. I was a company clerk there, and we kept records and all the influx of materials that you take to Vietnam. We went, I think there was 9 of us went with the Virginia National Guard. They flew us over in their C-130s, which was volunteer guys flying these airplanes from the one coast to the other side of the world. And you still see those C-130s flying, which was not a fast airplane, it was a cargo airplane. It took us 7 days to get there, and that was a real long story because every leg seemed to have an issue crop up with it, you know. The airplane wasn't running all that well, and we were taxiing in to get some work done on it, and the airplane, they hit the hangar with the airplane. Unbelievable, yeah. So then we leave there, flying to Midway, which was, you know, just goony bird land out in the middle of the ocean. And, well, I was a pilot at the time and watching what was going on because, you know, they're in the airplane, it's wide open seating. And I just like crawl up and sit there and watch them fly the airplane because what the hell, I had a lot of other things to do. So we're getting out there, and they're starting to chatter a lot of conversation going on. I crawled down and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, you know, we're pretty low on fuel." And I said, "Yeah, well, we're out in the middle of the ocean." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "It's only a couple minutes to Midway." I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "Well, we got about 2 minutes of fuel." Obviously we made it, but that's how close that call was. So from there we went to the Philippines, to Clark Air Force Base. And at Clark, the weather was really tough. Now we're going into Vietnam from there. So we take off out of there and run into a thunderstorm or weather that was unbelievable. I thought for sure it was over that day because it trashed us around that airplane like strapped down in your seat. You were still bouncing right up against the harnesses, tight. I mean, the cargo was shifting. I at one time thought we were upside down for, you know. So we get to Vietnam, and the first thing is there was no need for me as a company clerk. So I said, well, what do we do? And they said, well, we'll just put you over on the intelligence side. They need people over there. So then I got on-the-job training as a military intelligence analyst on site. We worked at what was called SICV, which was part of MACV. SICV is a Combined Intelligence Center of Vietnam, and actually at one point they called it the Pentagon of the East. It was a building that housed not only the U.S. troops, but we had the Vietnamese in there, and it was all branches of the service. We're all in that one building. We took in and recorded, all kinds of different things, sightings of operations. What we were trying to do at a longer run was put together a target for our troops to go get. That was the ultimate goal. There's tons of photo coming in all that time of recce tech. They were from aerial stuff, and that was being viewed by specialists that just miles and miles of footage and try to look down and from above and see what was there. And of course, then we'd combine it with reports, on-ground reports. We had some people working out in the country that would feed information back. There was probably more moments that you'd say, geez, let me out of here, I want to go do something and make a difference, because it's frustrating just developing targets and not knowing if they ever hit them or what happens out there. No, anybody was a target almost anywhere. We were out actually in Ben Hoa, which is a northern suburb of Saigon, right on the river, on the Saigon River, where it makes a big turn, heads out to the countryside north. In my time I was there, McNamara visited. I was the guy who held the pages and turned them on the charts, And as he come into the room, he wanted to see the troops, So I got to shake hands with McNamara and Westmoreland. And of course, McNamara was a politician. Westmoreland was the military, and he was kind of, I got to do this because he did it. He didn't really relish shaking hands with a specialist, but just casual meeting of both of those two, which is maybe the highlight of my 15 months. The toughest thing possibly for me being in Vietnam was Saigon. It was just jammed with refugees. And these refugees had nothing more than being a refugee. So they were sleeping on the streets. They pulled anything over their head to keep dry at night. There was no garbage because they ate it all. When they got a pile of garbage or rubbish at the end of the street, and one side a human being is going up, filtering through, and the other side are two dogs, that's what you see. And that's really painful to see a country suffering like that. The good part is it's a relatively secure environment. I mean, particularly when I was working at SICV, I'd be inside of a secure building. One thing that our troops really suffered in Iraq, and that was these large roadside bombs. They did not have any remote devices, and so they had to deliver the hand grenade by driving by in a cyclone and throwing it at you or in your vicinity. And so you had some reaction time. Back then, 2 years in the military, 3 was a commitment, a full commitment by volunteering. Then I came back, and they were at the airport glad to see me, and we came back to the farm, and my mother had 4 brothers who were in World War II, so she knew, what you needed most of all was some time to decompress from that kind of a place. So I came back to the farm, and they were very supportive, and we kind of resumed farming slowly. Well, you're quite glad to be back, obviously, but you do have a lot of bad memories and nights. You jump out of bed and, that sort of stuff. The group that we went with was the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council. What they call it is a see for yourself tour. And we went there to see where our product was going and how it was being used. And along the way, we were promoting it as well. Went to to Hanoi, and there we found a couple of big importers. And then, of course, we went to some sites where that was consumed. Hog operation, a chicken operation, even down in the Mekong later on to see where the fish were fed. And of course, along the way, you meet the attachés and the USEC folks that are over there that are representing us on a day-to-day basis. One of the reasons I was looking for that type of an opportunity was to get back and see if my thoughts weren't correct, that Vietnam would be better off without us. And I think we found that. I found a sort of vindication and a closure, if you will, to the whole situation. Well, I went there 50 years after I'd served over there. And I found Vietnam to be a very vibrant country. You don't have freedom of ownership of properties, etc. But people were productive, people were energetic, their commerce was flowing, and if you look at Saigon today compared to 50 years ago, it's thriving. It was what I wanted to do and see. I didn't care to go where some old bomb crater was. I wanted to see what the Vietnamese people were like today. There's quite a difference, if you will, between North Vietnam. If you're on the street talking to people, it's more subdued. And I kind of compare that's Beijing, if you will, because that's where the rules are made and the government are up there. And down in Saigon is where the money is made. And it's just a high, freewheeling. It reminds you of Malaysia or somewhere, Singapore. The ports are busy, the country's alive. And you can see that, but you know, it is 1,100 miles between those two cities, so it's a very long, narrow country, down to 27 miles wide in the narrowest, right on the DMZ area. We went out of there and we kind of swung over the city of Saigon. It was an open, clear day, 50 years ago, and we flew north up along the coastline, off the coast, and as we were leaving, I'm looking back, I said, you know, that is one beautiful country. It's just unfortunate that it's a war zone at this time. And almost the same way this year, when I had the seating, went right up the countryside, and the same beautiful country it was back then, only it's at least somewhat at peace.
It was a win-win situation. Habitat for Humanity needed people to build a new home, and the students from the carpentry program at Riverland Community College were looking for a project to sink their fasteners into. Since the partnership began a few years ago, the collaboration has turned out 2 new homes.
I'm Walt Alms, and one of the carpentry instructors here at Riverland Community College. We have partnered with the Freeborn Mower County Habitat for Humanity, building these homes for individuals here in Mower County. And we've been partnered with them for 3 years here, building homes with them. Riverland in the past had built houses in the community, and we were in the process of trying to figure out how we could continue to build houses, and the sale of the houses was in some cases difficult for us. We owned them. The college had to cover the cost of the house during the build, and so with the partnership with Habitat, it gave us the opportunity to build a house, and then they covered the cost. And so it really is a win for the college as far as the ability to continue to build a house without having the cost of building it. What you see behind us is the house that we'll be finishing up here this spring. It started this fall with the groundbreaking and the foundation work and the selection of the homeowner. And so coming up in the spring here, we'll have a dedication that'll turn the house from Habitat for Humanity over to the homeowner. By that time, by April, end of April, 1st of May, we'll be completing the house. This is actually the 22nd house in Moore County. There's some in Lyle and some of the other surrounding communities. This house will have 60-some feet of property, and there was a house located on that property. And so they were knocked down, cleaned out, and both of these are put in new. The Riverland Carpentry program, as well as the Riverland Electrical program, work on this house throughout the year. It starts out with the second-year carpentry class, comes out and does some initial site work. They do the footings and concrete and foundation work, and once that is completed, then the first-year students come out here, and then they do all of the construction. So what you see directly behind us, the sheetrock walls and the things that are going on now, that's being done by first-year students. And the electrical class has come over and done the initial rough-in wiring, and within the next 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, they'll be back and they'll start hanging fixtures and completing the electrical in the house as well. We connect as many students to the project as possible. With the smaller group, they can put 2 or 3 people on a project and kind of get them started, and then move on to another group and have them doing something else. So there's small groups doing multiple things going on in the house at this time. We've got sheetrock taping going on in the garage, and flooring going on in the living room, and getting kind of cleaned up in the basement to start finishing down there as well. So it works out really well for us. It gives both the second-year students and the first-year students an opportunity to be involved in a house, and yet it's got all of the things that we need to teach the students. It's got stairways and the ability to hang doors and sheetrocking and siding, and so it's got really, it answers all of our required needs. Prior to us building our first house 3 years ago, they couldn't get a house. They couldn't get volunteers, they couldn't get a project coordinator, they couldn't find anybody to basically head up a house build. That's what we do, and they don't have to worry about it. First, we're revitalizing this neighborhood by putting in a house that was prior had been run down and substandard with a new home. And then we're providing a home for a family. They're so excited about the house that it makes it easy to want to do it. You know, it really does. It makes it pretty easy to say, you know what, we can do that, because they're so excited for what they're getting. It's very rewarding for the students as well as us instructors. In this case, I think they've got 2, maybe 3 children, husband and wife. They've never had their own home before. They've always rented. So, you know, there's some real satisfaction and real excitement for them, for the families, you know, that they get to move into a house.
We went on a cruise recently, but we didn't go down to the Gulf of Mexico or check out a glacier in Alaska. We stayed right here in southeastern Minnesota. We trolled around Albert Lee Lake aboard the Pelican Breeze 2.
We're really pleased that all of you are here this evening, and we hope you all enjoy a very relaxing cruise with us. What is happening now is the captains are just putting the plank outside the boat. In just a second, they will push the boat off and we will head out onto the lake. I'm Gail Leverson, and I'm a first mate on the Pelican Breeze. Oh, the Pelican Breeze is a lovely tour boat that tours on Albert Lee Lake. It's a 60-foot pontoon-style boat with a paddle wheel on the back, and it can carry up to 55 passengers comfortably. And it tours Albert Lee Lake several times a week. Tonight, at the wheel, we have Captain Joel. He will guide us through the waters of Albert Lee Lake. You know, we have people of all ages riding on the Pelican Breeze. We have children, we have middle-aged people. Very often through the summer we take a lot of nursing home groups because we have a ramp and it's such a large boat. It's very easy for nursing home groups to bring people on wheelchairs on the boat. So it's wheelchair accessible. So we have a variety of people that come aboard. You know, a lot of the people are from the area, but we get a lot of motor coach groups that come in from different areas. We get people that travel a little bit of a distance to come to Albert Lee, and one of the things that they really enjoy doing is riding on the Pelican Breeze because it gives them a different view of the lake, not just seeing it from the edge, but actually going out on it. And then when people come on the boat, they're seated at tables, and the tables have maps on them that was donated by the watershed board so they can follow the route that they're taking when they're cruising, and they can see the different depths of the lake. People seem to really enjoy having those tables and those maps. This is a very, very large lake. So where we left from and all the way down to the I-35 bridge, you're only viewing 1/3 of the lake. This is a very large lake. If you look at the maps in front of you on your tables, those maps were donated to the Pelican Breeze by the watershed board. And then you can follow where we're going this evening and you can look at some of the different depths of the lake. But now this is just one of my favorite views that come into play here. My very favorite thing to point out when we're on the lake is when we come out of this bay area and we're pretty secluded in here, and then we turn around that bend and the lake opens up all the way down to the I-35 bridge. And I think it's quite spectacular when people have that view because normally you don't have that from the shore. And we do different things on the boat, different events. On Friday night, we have pizza cruises. People come on and they enjoy a boat ride and they enjoy having pizza. We have public cruises every Sunday through the summer. And then we have special parties that go on the boat where people charter it. They charter it. We've had people get married on the boat. We've had birthday parties on the boat. We've had reunions on the boat. So people charter it for many, many different reasons. And we've even had Marion Ross from Happy Days, who lived in Albert Lee. She has been on the boat a couple of times. You know, my very favorite part about being on the boat, and one reason why I volunteer, all of us that are associated with the Pelican Breeze are all volunteers. My favorite part is just enjoying seeing people's faces, just enjoying the quietness and the ride on the boat. And I enjoy when the nursing home groups come on and they're able to get out on the water. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a chance to do that. But I really enjoy all the people.
When it rains, it pours. On July 5th and 6th, 1978, a storm dropped 6 inches of rain that caused the Zumbro River to swell and flood the city. Water raged down Rochester streets and rushed into people's homes, filling their basements and first floors. Let's take a look back at that waterlogged incident.
Rochester's first flood was recorded in 1855, and devastating floods followed in 1866, 82, and 1908. It was an historic flood in 1978 that prompted major flood control by the city. On the evening of July 5th, heavy thunderstorms rolled into the area, dumping nearly 7 inches of rain within 24 hours. The Zumbro River and Bear, Silver, and Cascade Creeks rose 1 foot per hour, and by morning had overflowed their banks, flooding downtown and causing $60 million in damage. Floodwaters reached 6 feet deep or more in Rochester's south and northeast sections. Nearly 5,000 residents had to be evacuated. Several bridges were swept away, trees uprooted, cars overturned, and 80% of the city lost power. Tragically, human lives were lost. After the disaster, a $115 million flood control project was designed and constructed between 1984 and 1995.